In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.
Please be seated. I invite you to pause, to breathe. You might still get a whiff of the incense that we burned a little earlier. Pause again. And remember that at this moment you've left behind a lot of other things, and you've entered into the holy mystery of Holy Week. And together we gather, seeking to walk the steps that Jesus walked, and to see things, to see life differently, to hear differently, to understand differently. So I pray for all of us that in this really first day that we surrender our stressors and other things so that our eyes are open to the things that Jesus wants us to see. Let's think about how God, and in our particular instance here, Christ is being described in the prophet Isaiah. I know they didn't see that in the day it was written, but the church has taken that for Christ. And the prophet saying, on God's lips, "Here's my servant, whom I uphold, my chosen, in whom my soul delights. I put my spirit upon him, and he will bring forth justice to the nations." Not justice to this nation, Israel, because that's who they were talking about, but justice to the nations. I got to thinking about the context that this was written in, which was exile. The people of God had had everything torn away from them, destroyed. Everything they believed were broken. And here's this message coming still in the midst of exile. It's not over by any means. It's just they're starting to get glimmers from God that things are going to be changing. And the message isn't just for Israel. I wonder, is there something about us human beings when we can really see and take note of our own pain and brokenness that opens up our hearts to others who are also broken? And so maybe it makes great sense here that the message is for the nations, plural. And then the style, the character of the ministry of the servant of Christ is described by saying he will not cry or lift up his voice or make it heard in the street. So he's not going to have an easy time of it, and yet you're not going to hear his complaint. And then a bruised reed he will not break, and a dimly burning wick he will not quench. He will faithfully bring forth justice. So the right is going to happen, but for those who are weak, for those who have been bruised, for those who feel like there's virtually no light left, they won't be snuffed out. They won't be broken. That's Christ's modus operandi, and the one we attempt to follow. So as we pause in this Monday night of Holy Week, we begin to think about, maybe more deeply, what Jesus was like and how we are to be with those that he loved and called us to love. Then some more descriptions. I've taken you by the hand. I've given you as a covenant to the people, a light to the nations. I've given you to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, and from the prison those who sit in darkness. Again, hints as to why the church has adopted this as a description of Christ, as he claimed those things for himself. And again, the connection between all those who are in prison, all those who are in exile. And for me, the piece in this that stuck out the most was this message of hope comes, and it gets this description. We see the former things have come to pass, over, and new things I now declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. So before they happen, I'm letting you know in advance. It's happening. Newness is possible. And then the gospel, which is read this night every year on the Monday of Holy Week. Again, part of the reason why I wanted some incense left in the room, because Mary's at it again. We all know the famous one where Martha serves and Mary sits and listens at Jesus' feet. And what a hard time Martha gets. But now it's happening again. There's a dinner for Jesus, and Martha's serving. No surprise there. But Mary maybe paused, breathed, and maybe part of her knew that she was in Monday of Holy Week. And she had purchased this perfume, very expensive, and anointed Jesus' feet with it, and wiped his feet with her hair. Nothing else mattered. Everything else was gone, as gone can be for her. And all that was left there was that moment, what she was seeing and experiencing with Jesus at Jesus' feet at that time. And that's hard to do. It's hard to give ourselves like that. I hate to say it, but we're more like Judas Iscariot. You know, that perfume could have been sold 300 denarii, a year's wages. A year's wage. You can hear him say it, right? A year's wages. At the early service, I said, I shouldn't do it, but I'd say it again. Judas Iscariot was a vestry member. Financially responsible, right? A year's wages for that. You can hear that in a vestry meeting, can't you? But everything else was gone for her, but everything else wasn't gone for Judas. He had all these other things that distract us from what's important. And on Monday of Holy Week, for Mary, being at Christ's feet and anointing him in preparation for where he was going and what he was going to do and experience. And maybe when we sit at Jesus' feet enough, we see better. Or we become more like Judas and think, a year's wages? Man. You know? And then you got these other two reactions going on just almost immediately afterwards. You've got the crowd who wants something. So they're not all their distractions are gone, but a lot of them, they're trying to get to Jesus because they heard some things, you know, that maybe I can get healed or something, you know. But then the church leaders, the synagogue leaders, the religious leaders, then we've had, we want to do away with him and Lazarus because they're taking away from our base. Taking away from our base. And I think, unfortunately, we can relate with them, too, because we have a comfort in the status quo. Sometimes, even if it isn't good for us, we have a comfort in the status quo, and we fear. I fear putting all these other things aside and letting it just be Christ. Even on Monday night of Holy Week. Let alone a year's wages, but to just set it all aside and for that moment see what's most important. You two have a really great advantage at the moment. The really, really important is right in your face. Okay? 6 months, 8 months, you'll be normal like the rest of us. But I think even you understand this need that we fight to let all this other stuff drop for a moment, to see what's most important. And on Monday Holy Week, I think that's to sit at Jesus' feet and to see Christ as Christ is. But later tonight, it might be me really seeing Cindy. Or when I'm divesting, really seeing Aaron. And letting that moment be. And seeing what's most important in that moment. And being open to that. Because I assure you that if Mary were here and I would ask her, so Mary, was this about you? And she'd look at me like I was from Mars. Of course it wasn't about me. Of course it wasn't about me. And she was able to see Jesus like that. My guess is that after that, she was able to do that for other people as well. And I think that's a good mission for us. Let those other things go and to see what's really important right in front of us. Amen.